Good morning readers, it's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf and welcome to another bookish breakfast. So this is a bookish breakfast in the middle of the night. It's more of like a midnight snack breakfast because I'm on night shifts and yeah, I just thought either I'm going to have to do it really late or I'll just have to do it early, and I feel like bright and energetic now, whereas I probably won't feel bright and energetic at sort of 9 o'clock when I'm trying to crawl into bed. So I thought I'll just do a quick little summary of my weekly reading now for you. So I've actually read a lot this week. It's been a very varied reading week for me, I would say. So there's quite a few things to mention, but I'll try and do it quickly because obviously it's my break and I'm worried about somebody walking into the room and thinking that I'm being really weird. I'll just tell them that I'm having a video call. That's how I'll solve it. The main thing that I've been reading today when I was like trying to chill out and prepare for my night shifts was more Pride and Prejudice. So normality has been restored. I'm back to being in love with Pride and Prejudice and desperate to keep reading it and read more, even though I know it so well now. So I've really been enjoying getting back into that. So I'm at the point now, really towards the end of the book, where everything is kind of working its way towards being resolved, and I don't want to put it down because I want to get to that lovely happy resolution, and as usual when you reread a book that's as good as Pride and Prejudice, there's always more things to notice and to think about, and what I've really been noticing this time, weirdly, is the constant association between Lydia and fabrics. So she's always talked about in association with like fabrics being bought or fabrics being maybe damaged and put back together. She like buys a bonnet deliberately in order to rip it apart and put it back together again. Even in the letter where she writes about her elopement, she writes about having a tear that needs to be mended, and then also there's a lot of talk about like the money that's going to be spent on her clothes and you know what she wears and what she should wear, and I just like that. Sorry, I'm trying to put my other hand on my phone. That kind of even deeper implication of Lydia as being this kind of like damaged goods, I suppose. It just kind of like adds a little bit of repetition to that theme, I suppose, of her being something trivial and easily damaged, but also apparently easily sort of recovered or patched over, in the way that the tear is patched over, her issues are kind of patched over and resolved. So that was something that I noticed that I haven't noticed before. And then the other thing is, it just strikes me that just throughout her novels, Austen has this recurring ambition to present love as rational. So she talks about how Lizzie's feelings for Darcy stem partially from sort of gratitude and a better knowledge of his character, and how she contrasts that with love that's based on sort of irrational behaviour and the sort of love at first sight that was perhaps maybe a bit more popular at the time. I don't know. I mean, love at first sight is an idea that we continue to be, for some reason, obsessed by. And yeah, it just made me think of how throughout the books, the more rational forms of love are the forms that Austen kind of promotes and represents as being, good and sensible. But not just sensible, but also like that love can be rational, but still be romantic, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. So yes, that was my thoughts on Pride and Prejudice, which I should probably have finished by the end of today, much as I should be asleep. And then the other thing that I've been reading today was a bit more of Alice Oswald, Falling Awake. So I was reading this on my last break. So this is a poetry collection, and I'm into the last poem, which is a long poem. It's nearly half of the book, called Tithonus, 46 Minutes in the Life of the Dawn, which is based around this Greek myth where the Dawn fell in love with somebody called Tithonus, and she begged Zeus to give him eternal life, and he did, but he didn't stop him from aging. So she then imagines what it's like for Tithonus as a very old man to experience this love that he shares with the Dawn, but is no longer able to really properly experience due to his excessive old age. Yeah, I found it interesting, but I'm finding it so far interesting, but not maybe as interesting as it should be for that theme. I don't know, maybe I'm just not quite getting it, but I feel like it's more of a thought experiment and less something that the poet is actually emotionally invested in. I think she kind of just maybe heard the myth and thought, oh, that would be a nice thing to write a poem about, and did it as like a writing exercise rather than because she really, really wanted to explore the difficulties of those feelings. So yeah. But that ties nicely onto my other reading project that I was talking about last week, in terms of reading more classic-y stuff. And I have pursued my reading of the Odyssey. Telemachus has made it all the way off of the island of Ithaca, so progress has been made very, very slowly because of constantly cross-referencing all of the different characters and all of the different things that they mention to try and get a better idea of the Greek mythical context, which is working. I feel like I'm getting something out of it, but it does mean that progress is slow. One thing that I have to say is that I thought that the main character of the Odyssey was going to be Odysseus, and I still think that it will be at some point. But I'm hoping that over the course of the Odyssey we are going to see some pretty strong character development from Telemachus, because at the moment I'm not his biggest fan. He's like this. I think he must be maybe like 21 or something, because he doesn't really remember his father. His father left when he was a baby. And so far, all he's done is, like, he's failed to kick out some people who are harassing his mum and having parties in his house. And, like, even when he says, oh, I'm going to kick you out, but finish your party, it's fine, like, that's cool. And then he goes and he complains to some other people. And then he's like, well, going off in a strop and like, oh, well, I'm going to go to Pylos anyway, so there. Kind of thing. And, like, even speaking to his mother in such an unpleasant, disrespectful way, like telling her, oh, shut up and go to your room because I'm the one who has to make the decisions around here. It's such a typical entitled 21-odd-year-old young man type attitude. But I really, really hope to get some more from that character, because I would like to like him, So that's Telemachus. And then, interestingly, like, the moment he leaves Ithaca and he gets onto the boat, suddenly he's an amazing sailor and seems to be pretty competent and decent. But hopefully that's just like one thing that goes in towards the development of him as a character. I don't know. So the other thing that I'm reading as part of my reading project is the 50 Ideas from Literature That You Need to Know book by, I'm going to say, John Sutherland. I obviously don't have it here with me to check. That has been pretty interesting. So it's basically talking, at the moment I'm in this section called machinery, or mechanics, and it's like how it works, and it's talking about like basically structural elements of literature. I think that's the idea. And like more of the kind of background scene. And what I'm finding is that it feels like lots of different ways of expressing the same thing. So one of the ideas that Sutherland chooses to include is the idea of the paradigm shift, which is obviously from science, in which like there are a range of ideas, and then one becomes like the principal idea, and then eventually another idea comes and topples that idea. And he kind of asks, does this apply to literature? And maybe it did in terms of, like, say, the way that Wordsworth and his contemporaries completely, like, throughout the rule book in terms of how poetry was written, or something like that. But it doesn't really apply to literature maybe nowadays, because we can have multiple different things existing at the same time. But to me, it definitely applies to literary criticism, because they seem to have, like, a paradigm of, like, everyone should analyze a text with regard to, like, this system, and then suddenly, oh no, there's this system that you should use, and he's trying to kind of explain different ones, or different words that you could use to pretty much explain the same thing. So maybe I just don't quite get it. But yeah, I think it's more, it would be more helpful if you were then to say, oh yes, but I'm going to do a base superstructure analysis of these texts or something, rather than to a casual reader. But yeah, I think it's still going to add something to my reading, potentially. So the other book that I've been reading is The Hidden Life of Trees by, I think his surname's Wohlleben, which is for Springathon. I have to say, I don't think I'm going to finish it before the end of Springathon, because that's like 2 or 3 days, and I'm on nights until then. But I'm happy with that. I'm fine with that. Sorry, my battery's just low. I think I can just, like, chip away at it over the course of longer time, and that's fine. It's not really a book that I'm passionate about finishing, but it's interesting. So yeah, that's all I really have to say there. And then finally, I've been continuing with The Testament of Youth by Vera Brittain, which is a book that I've been loving so much for the last month or so that I'm really kind of sad to have to say that I'm not enjoying the end of it so much. I've got maybe like, well, you don't have the book to compare it to, but maybe I've got less than a fifth of the book to go, maybe about a sixth of the book, and the war is over and her studies in Oxford are over, and now she is just like living in London and teaching a little bit, trying to be a writer and getting involved in some politics of the time, and loads of it is just about the League of Nations. And the League of Nations was this thing that was set up after World War One, and they really believed it was going to be so important. And yeah, it was important, and like we studied it in history, like it was relevant to events later in the century, but really the debates that she pours so much effort into describing, and all of the different characters that she really tries to bring to life on the page, they have completely been relegated to the footnotes of history, and it just completely has nothing in it to inspire us the way that her writing about her war work did, which I guess, I mean, it's a sad thing that I'm more interested in the drama of war than in the construction of peace, I suppose. But there was more of human interest in hearing what it was like to care for people who were injured and so on, than there is in hearing about people debating minor issues that just have no relevance to the modern day. And, you know, there is a constant relevance to suffering and grief and, you know, human injury. And there is a constant irrelevance to old white men in a room talking about human suffering, I suppose. Not to sound overly critical, but yeah, it seems a bit impotent compared to the earlier part of the book. But yeah, I still want to persevere and finish it, and I think also for the resolution to some of her kind of like personal life, I feel like, well, I know, because she's pretty liberal in her sort of use of foreshadowing and telling us what the plot's going to be, a bit like the Odyssey, that she's going to get some kind of like personal resolution. She's going to get married, and I feel like she still fits into the slightly Victorian mindset of, you know, a marriage is the suitable ending to a book. So I'm guessing that that's going to be the end point of the story. But yeah, it's not as good as it was. Although I can still count it towards Springathon, because she spends a lot of time describing like the flowers or the nature or anything at various points where she goes along. So if I manage to finish that one in the next couple of days, I can count that one. It's also got a flower on the front of it, so you know I'm winning. Yeah, so that's my reading for this week, and I hope you're all sleeping soundly if you're in a place where you would be asleep, and maybe if you're in a different time zone, maybe you wouldn't be asleep, and maybe I need to stop talking. Okay, good night everyone, and take care.